Before we get started, we've got something to mention. The Berthon International YouTube channel is a big part of how we represent our fleet. It's updated regularly with walkthroughs, sea trials and conversations with interesting people from across our industry. It's a straightforward way to get a proper feel for the yachts we have for sale, wherever you are, and to shortlist before stepping on board. It gives you a proper sense of the boats without ever having to be there in person. You can find it by searching Berthon International on YouTube. We'll leave it there. Thanks for listening.
So, right, now we can all hear each other. There's no echoes. I'm not going to press any buttons. Right, let's get into it. So it's a good job this isn't live, isn't it? I think everyone will be pulling their hair out. Or change over to watch the cricket or something.
I told Tom that after this, our next stop is going to be Joe Rogan, I think.
Yeah.
Aiming high here.
Whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
So, welcome everybody. It's Ben here from Ben Cooper, actually, because we've got two Bens now. From Berthon Yacht Brokers, and we're here to do a podcast with Tom and Duncan from Oceanskies, our friends over in the Channel Islands. And maybe, Tom, can you tell us a little about the company and what you do? This is all about yacht registration and what do you do for our international clients, as well as our domestic clients, of course.
Absolutely. Great to be here, Ben. Thanks for the introduction. And just a really quick overview then on Oceanskies. So a company was set up in 2013, and between Duncan and I, we head up the yacht registration team based out of Guernsey. Albeit with a UK presence, Malta and Dubai as well. And we specialise predominantly in Red Ensign British flagging of private and commercial yachts of all sizes, whether that's your under 24 metre or over 24 metre. That is what our bread and butter is, working with clients from all around the world. So trying to come up with solutions for them on what flag's going to suit them best, and in terms of navigating and making sure they don't come across any hurdles at the same time. Yes,
excellent. The good old red duster. So, we come to you on a regular basis for many years as our experts on this side. We have a good knowledge as brokers, as good brokers always do, of registration. But of course, we always get the difficult questions that we need to refer to experts like you who are on the cutting edge of this. So, and in our last market report, which is a shameless plug, it's on the internet if you'd like to, on our website, if you'd like to go and read it in full, you published an update for us about eligibility of Part 1 registration, and that is all tied in with Brexit, etc. So perhaps, this podcast is mainly about that, but maybe to start with, we should have a quick overview of registration, because I'm conscious that a lot of our listeners will be experienced yachters, and there might just be people who've stumbled across this podcast and don't know anything about registration at all. So would you mind just giving us a quick overall? I mean, why does a yacht need to be registered?
Yeah, sure. So a good way to think of a registration for a yacht is like a passport for us when we all travel internationally. It's a legal requirement. That's a pretty key one. Customs authorities, ports around the world will expect to see that when on arrival, to identify the key, ownership of the boat, unique numbers. So whether that's a hull number, official number with the boat, and specifications generally. So legal requirement, navigationally, obviously, each flag state has different rules and allows you to do different things. So again, big reason why we work with British predominantly is because the heritage is there. Internationally, they're recognised around the world, allowing you to get the permits to access, international destinations, whether that be islands or continents. And then, other than that as well, insurance companies is the other big one. You're not going to get insurance unless a boat's registered and shown that it meets certain standards and documents are available. Whilst technically sometimes on deliveries yachts can be delivered without a full registration, that full registration will follow soon after, and that is conditional on insurance being in place. So whether it's before or after a handover, registration document is key to give the unique details of the boat and the ownership.
And very important for anyone sailing further afield than their home port or home country jurisdiction, and in Europe and further afield, I guess.
Yeah,
That's right. And it's also international law basically requires your yacht to be registered. It's got to have a nationality. Otherwise, the boat technically could be lawless. You could be getting up to all sorts of things on the boat and not be held accountable by anybody. So one of the nice things about the British flag is it's always been very well regarded. I think a lot of that is down to tradition and, Britain's seafaring, maritime history. Also, just the way the world has sort of developed in terms of maritime law. London has always been the sort of centre of marine law, insurance as well, as Tom just mentioned. And often we're always sort of, we have that conversation when somebody is, an owner is looking to purchase the yacht. The first flag they're probably going to think about is their own flag. A Frenchman might think, right, I'm buying a boat and I'll register in France because I'm French and that's where I'm going to keep the boat. And there's absolutely nothing wrong in that. There's nothing wrong with having a French flag. But I often sort of explain, well, your flag is the operating system of your yacht. It's a bit like choosing Windows or Mac. It's how it's the rule book. It's how it's got to operate. So I think on that basis, it's worth as an owner, before you commit maybe to your own flags, to have a think. Where am I going to use the boat? How am I going to use it? Is there maybe a flag out there that might offer me something I'm missing with my own flag? It might simply be because it's maybe a little bit complicated to register where you're established or where you're living. And I think what's great about the British flag is it's not only well regarded, but it was also kind of yacht friendly, in the sense that if you do want to look things up and understand what rules apply to your boat, it's very easy to find it and understand where you are with things. And that's possibly not always the case with certain flags. And also there's this sort of air of, I think when you're flying the Red Ensign, it's a good flag to fly, and especially if you're sailing internationally. It's flag that doesn't sort of cause too much upset. It's well regarded. You see a lot of British flags. Sometimes I have clients who, I always sometimes use the analogy of the Australian client who says, look, I have an Australian flag. The sad thing is I'll be the one Australian flag boat on the dock, maybe in Nice. And suddenly I'm surrounded by all my mates from Australia. They want to see whose boat it is. Whereas, Red Ensign, you just fit in. There'll be lots of other Red Ensigns on the dock, and I don't think, it doesn't so much apply maybe to the private yachts, but certainly in the commercial world, you have kind of a league table. There's various league tables of flags, and for example, one of the big ones that's just been published, the latest update in the past week or so is the Paris MOU. And this is a way that port state control around the world can sort of, work out which flags they probably need to pay more attention to in terms of sort of safety and, checking, because they can only obviously check so many vessels in a day. So there's a tendency to always check the ones from the flags that aren't so well founded. And happily, the British flag sits very high on these rankings. So, there are league tables out there. So I always think if you're spending a lot of money on a yacht, you probably want to be on a good, well-founded flag. It's nothing worse than a sort of strange or unusual port of registry, because that's just going to stand out and maybe cause you unwanted attention where you don't need it from port control.
Yeah, excellent. Well, very good sales pitch there, Duncan. Thank you very much for the
I'm obviously also terribly patriotic as well. I do quite enjoy selling, as it were, the British flag.
Excellent.
Around the world. It's nice.
So within the British flag, we've got Part 1 and Part 3, or sometimes the small ships register, as we should call it. Give us a quick rundown of the difference and who can apply for either.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Just a quick pause in the conversation. Each year, Berthon publishes a market report reviewing yacht sales across the previous 12 months and looking ahead to the trend shaping the market. It's based on real transactions and conversations across our international brokerage network, so it gives a clear view of what's actually happening, rather than just sentiment. You can find the latest report on the Berthon website. Thank you, and let's carry on.
Yeah, so SSR registration tends to be, if we're talking about UK, so it'd be UK residents, UK nationals are eligible. Good for local motoring. You can motor, a lot of SSR registered boats in the EU as well, but you're limited. You have to be, UK resident to access that. Same with whether that's Guernsey, let's say, or Jersey, all the equivalents, all the different flag states. That's the same rule there, and it has to be owned in your personal name. So that is as simple as it is, really. Part 1 gives you the option, you have all the different eligibilities, which is obviously what we're here talking about today.
Yeah.
Each flag state has that list of who they're allowed to register. So you can register to as an individual or with a company. The other thing is you can register mortgages, which is a big one for a lot of people on Part 1. And it's proving ownership in the vessel. You provided title documents, official title documents to evidence when the vessel was built, who it was built for, who the owners have been, and you're ideally wanting that full title chain. So it just makes it easier, say, if an owner's wanting to own the boat in a trust, Part 1's what you want to do.
I always think another advantage of Part 1 is when you come to sell the boat. Because very often your buyer is going to want to, or will request what's called a transcriptor registry. So that's basically a live snapshot of what the registry see in their records. So that's going to tell somebody buying a boat who the owner is, which is great, because you obviously hope that the guy you're buying the boat from hopefully is also noted as the registered owner. And as Tom just said, it's a title register. So you have a bit of comfort that to get that boat registered on Part 1, the person you're buying it from must have proven title. They'd have had to show a bill of sale. They'd have had to show they genuinely, lay claim to being the owner of the boat. And also, it goes back to exactly what Tom just said. Part 1 does allow a mortgage to be registered. So when you get that transcript of registry, it gives you comfort, hopefully. Hopefully it's, there's no nasties on it. You're not sort of about to buy a boat and suddenly find there's a bank loan outstanding. But it does afford that peace of mind. And when
as brokers, sorry to talk over you, Duncan, but as brokers, as a matter of course, we will, if it's a Part 1 or if any other registry, will request a transcript to make sure that we can transact the boat without any liens. We can't do legally, and we shouldn't do. So the Part 1 registry does give us that, and it's fantastic for us.
Yeah, and I've had situations where we've been looking to collect the title for a boat we might be registering, and of course the buyer quite rightly say, well, can we get a transcript? And lo and behold, it's on the SSR. You're not really able to access that same level of comfort because, quite frankly, whoever put the boat on the SSR didn't necessarily have to sort of provide the same level of title. And because there's no ability to register that mortgage, it could be that there's some sort of debt on that boat that you might not know about. So it's I always sort of throw that in though as a really big advantage. It's not always apparent because in the moment you're buying the boat, you might not be thinking about the time you need to sell it, but it certainly pays dividends in the future.
It adds almost a bit of a premium onto a boat when you are selling it because a lot of the time you've got to flag that your buyer should hopefully be eligible to take on and keep, so you're not having to delete and re-register. Also, if your boat isn't Part 1 registered, and you're trying to get it onto Part 1 and it's been 10 years, say, a lot of the time, it's that classic, the dog's eaten it or we've lost the paperwork and it becomes really difficult. They don't make many exceptions. The British flags want to keep that quality. So we always say sooner rather than later, if you can get her on a British flag from the start, then
that's actually
worthwhile.
It's a really good point, Tom, because I've had cases where a yacht could have been on the SSR for, as I'm saying, maybe 10 years. But the person buying the boat is thinking, right, now I want a Part 1. But the UK registry would probably say, great, please provide us with 5 years worth of historical title. So that's actually more than just the bill of sale from the seller of the boat to yourself. That's actually going back in time. It can go back past that 5-year period if the person then had the boat before that. So you sometimes find the yacht that's been on the SSR, as Tom says, those bills of sale just aren't there. The records just haven't been kept up as well. And to go hunting for documents that may now no longer exist is really difficult. And obviously, if the boat's already Part 1 registered, you just don't have that worry because it's been done already. It's on the registry.
Yes, yeah. But I think the Part 3 or the SSR does have its place, doesn't it? Because it's very quick, it's very easy, it's an online application. I can't remember exactly how much it is, but it's not a very large cost. But whereas Part 1 registry, you have to have tonnage surveys and a lot of paperwork and etc. Yeah. So there is a cost to Part 1, a lot more than Part 3, but I think they both have their places.
Absolutely. And I sometimes say, and I don't mean this to disparage the SSR, because I totally agree there is a place for it. I sometimes say, well, it's cheap and cheerful, and probably on a smaller boat, maybe lower value, but of course value is always relative, to the owner. Yeah, I mean, it definitely has its time and place. Somebody, buying a higher value, larger yacht these days, I'm always keen though to put them towards the Part 1. I think that then is money well spent.
I think a classic thing, we sat here in Guernsey while we're chatting to you, looking out the window into port. A lot of local boats here that will simply go to the neighbouring islands and Channel Islands and pop to France every now and then. SSR is sufficient in that case. It's only when the boats, we tend to say, go over maybe £500,000 maybe plus, then you start thinking a little bit more of how it's being structured maybe, and maybe that's where Part 1 would suit you more. But
or even where you're going further afield, I guess.
Absolutely. An insurance company as well. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think with we fought the corner of the Part 1 and the Part 3, so let's move on to the main purpose of this podcast. About the end of last year, wasn't it? Where eligibility changed for the Part 1 or British Registry in total. So that was all down to leaving the EU. So do you want to give us a quick overview of what happened?
Yes. Quickly, really. Following Brexit's what's triggered this, as you said. The UK government realised only at the end of last year that EU individuals, specifically, so not companies, were still being allowed to register yachts under Part 1 with the UK. So this is a UK flag specifically now. They had to change these rules as they're no longer able to offer this as part of Brexit, which has created issues for, as you can imagine, for whether it's new application, where you have an EU national who is not residing in the UK. So it's important to say as well. So a non-UK resident trying to apply from an EU country for a Part 1 registration is no longer able to. And also for existing customers who have already got a Part 1 at the UK, EU nationals, what it does mean is they can no longer renew at the registry or change vessel details. So it's it's not going to affect everyone, but it's important for all your EU-based clients listening out there who were previously able to qualify through, let's say, a French, Spanish passport. That is no longer the case. So really, this podcast, it's important to get it out there that they should be thinking about what they're going to do next. I have spoken with the UK as well this week, just in anticipation of us talking today, and they've confirmed that these rules aren't going to be changed anytime soon. I think it always takes time anyway with law changes with the government, and it's normally on a big list and gets pushed down. But because this is so new, they've got no idea yet of when and if EU nationals will become eligible again. Even though it's in their interest, that is where we stand at the moment.
I think it's important to mention it. I don't think at all. This hasn't happened because the UK registry have decided they don't want EU or EEA nationals registering their boats in the UK. I think previously, certainly when the UK was part of the EU, so before Brexit, it was wrapped up under freedom of movement rules that a French passport holder could hold a UK flag, no problem. And I just think with all the legislation that must have had to change following Brexit, obviously the shipping regulation in terms of that particular sort of detail, probably quite just overlooked. somebody at some stage then realise, actually, we've got a problem here. Technically the eligibility that they previously enjoyed through freedom of movement just doesn't exist anymore. There is a list. There's a schedule to the Shipping Act in terms of eligibility that lists a whole range of nationalities and countries. US, for example, is on that list. Switzerland, there's a whole list of countries, and there's some countries on there you might not even expect to be sort of on that list to have the flag, but because they were specified through the schedule, that's all fine. Nothing's changed for them. It is just a curiosity that the EU and EEA nationals just aren't there. There's no actual provision there in the rules anymore for them to have the flag. So I think this is something they want to change, but I, as Tom said, I just don't think it's probably a priority in terms of laws being drafted and changed and amended and passed in terms of our government and parliament. So
it's also important to mention for all listeners, when you look at the Declaration of Eligibility, which is a document you will fill out to declare you are eligible, the UK registry still have not updated this yet. So if you and I were to look at this today and look at Schedule 6, as Duncan says, with those eligible countries and all the other eligible nationalities, it would still show EU on there and EEA, which is incorrect. So little tricky one to be aware of there. We are telling you this is accurate, but the form, basically, they haven't got around to updating the form yet when applying. So just be wary of that.
So if an application's in process at the moment, will it go through, do you think, or it'll just be returned?
Yeah, it'll be returned, unfortunately. So even if you're at provisional stage, so you're halfway almost to getting it fully registered, your provisional will remain in place for the 3-month validity, but you will no longer be able to go to full registration. Could be pretty problematic, especially when there's tight deadlines.
It was quite a challenge for us because when they sort of sent us the email saying this is what's happened, terribly sorry, we were in the process of actually registering a good number of yachts for EU, EEA nationals, so that was quite difficult because you sort of had to go back to the client and say, look, really sorry, but all this work we've done is actually we just can't do this.
We should hopefully, however, we should be past that stage. Because this obviously came in December, so I think more now it's a case of people who are already on Part 1 who are looking at the registration certificate and they've got the expiry up and coming, or even if it's next year. It's important those listeners start thinking about it now and reaching out, whether that's to Berthon, Oceanskies, whoever, to understand what are the next options, what's going to be the easiest solution, what that looks like. And that's different for everyone. Obviously, everyone's got different requirements, but they need to start thinking about it now. You don't want to leave it too late. You don't want to leave it any later than a couple of months before expiry, because sometimes things take time.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we're talking about private owner's nationality, aren't we? So a European citizen who happens to have a house in the UK is still not eligible.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And the other solution, if you're really wanting to keep the UK flag, it's there's no problem with setting up a yacht holding structure, a company that is from an eligible country. So as an example, we work with, say, UK BVI companies.
The strange, curious thing is a French company can still have a UK flag. It's just the nationals. We always caution, though. It's just individuals at the moment. But
so there are solutions. Basically.
There are solutions. And the other thing that's sort of interesting is, I know so far we really focused very much on the UK flag here, the UK ship register. That's forming part of something called the Red Ensign Group. So you not only have under what they call the British flag, the UK ship registry, which is mainland United Kingdom, you have the islands. So we've got, for example, the Isle of Man, we've got Guernsey and Jersey, the Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands. These registries all allow the owner to fly the British flag, the Red Ensign, and often you can fly the standard underface Red Ensign, or you fly the Red Ensign of the island which normally has the coat of arms or the embellishment of that island on it. Now, interestingly, you look at, say, the Isle of Man or Jersey, as just two examples, they happily would allow you still, as a French passport holder, to access the flag. So where we have clients who are keen to keep that Red Ensign and they want to own the vessel in their own personal name, pretty good option for them is to consider basically a change of port. So you basically take the yacht away from the UK port of registry. For example, say your boat is registered in London or Hull or Plymouth. We basically would organise the transfer of the registration over to one of the other Red Ensign jurisdictions that allows you to have the flag. And I think the two we work with the most in respect of this would be Jersey, Isle of Man, Cayman Islands. So would accept EU and EEA nationals. A lot of the time depends on the size of the boat and other sort of factors, how it's operating and all the rest of it. But we do have solutions that do allow, or there are solutions that would allow the owner to keep that Red Ensign and not necessarily have to say, right, that's it, I've got to go and take a completely different flag for my yacht. So that is a good thing.
I think the other good thing with that is a lot of the time with it being part of the Red Ensign Group, if you transfer within it, you keep your official registration number. All the registries talk to each other. They're sharing information. It makes the process a lot simpler compared with deleting and re-registering. So it's a cheaper, quicker service, which means you're having to change less on board as an owner. Hopefully as well, a lot of the time your radio license, simple things like your call sign, MMSI number will stay the same, so you're not having to reprogram equipment on board. And navigationally, you've got, really, you've got all the same rights as you would with a UK flag. Obviously, there's fiscal elements which you need to speak with your tax advisor about. Yeah, because everyone's different. But it's the smoothest transition and keeps you in that British flag state.
Yeah. So to sum up, there is a pathway here. So if you currently under the British flag, you can, as a private individual, EU individual, you can move it to Jersey flag, which is quite quick, easy. Or Guernsey, Isle of Man, and I think
Guernsey's interesting. So
is Guernsey the same?
They've got quite narrow. So we're talking to you from Guernsey. So we're just across in the harbour from our local registry. Guernsey's slightly different. So Guernsey have very much kept their eligibility down to British nationals or British companies. So they've never had an option, for example, for a Frenchman to come along and access the flag. That's very much sort of following the sort of how things always used to be. Traditionally the British flag tended to be, like a lot of registries, very much closed to the nationals, or citizens or companies of that country. But over time, most of the I think say probably nearly all of the other British Red Ensign registries have sort of increased who can come and take access to the flag. Guernsey's slightly unusual there. It is a little bit more limited to the Brits, basically, which arguably it might be a shame for us because we could probably register more boats in Guernsey if it was slightly wider criteria. But I say we've got Jersey next door that welcome European owners, so that works very well for us. Okay.
Well, I think we've if any of our listeners are still awake on our thrilling chat,
I know
we'll thank them for their time. I think we've covered the main topic quite well here, and so probably wrap up. Now, if one of our listeners is affected by this change in eligibility, what will you recommend the first thing they do next?
I'd say reaching out, whether that's to Berthon, Oceanskies, registration agent, understanding where they sit, what their options are. We'll be asking questions of, where the yacht's going to be used. It's important on where their residence from a fiscal perspective. Again, speak with your tax advisor as part of this. Don't jump in immediately. And then hopefully it should be a simple case of planning ahead, giving yourselves plenty of time to then look into a transfer report to one of the similar Red Ensign flag states who will accept them still. And it can be quite a smooth process, hopefully done within a matter of weeks if they're organised about it. But please just pick up the phone really and have that chat, and that's where it will start from there.
Yeah, so I guess the message is not don't panic.
Absolutely.
Take some advice. There are some easier options, and there's some other options depending on your situation, cruising plans, etc., etc. So
and don't leave
of course, speak to us.
I was going to say, don't leave it too late. It's better to do to transfer the port. We really need the yacht still current on the UK register. If you leave it too late and you suddenly find the only thing you have is a deletion, that can be a little bit more problematic, especially if the deletion has sort of gets old, because it's still doable, and it becomes more of a re-registration then than a transfer report. So there's a little bit more paperwork.
Potential for for a surveyor to have to go and see the yacht again, which it's delays and extra cost. So as long as you're doing it within a timely manner, then all of that can be transferred from the UK to the new port without the need to redo everything.
And just to clarify, the surveyor is for the tonnage survey, which is traditionally, it always makes me chuckle, is how much wine you can carry, isn't it?
Exactly. How many tons? How many barrels of wine can you carry? Which is what all yacht owners need to know.
It's a good question though, because it's a question we get asked multiple times a week. You read tonnage survey. Everyone presumes it's down to a weight measurement of the vessel, and it isn't. And we get a lot of people calling up sort of saying, hang on, why doesn't this match? But actually it's because it's a measurement of the permanent the volume of the permanent hull of a vessel. So as you say, in theory, how much a vessel could carry back in the day, which it seems rather outdated, but the positive
I
of
think
it
historically it's grain, but I like wine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're not going to complain there. It's useful, and
it's difficult. And I'm speaking here we both are tonnage measurers, and it can be a little bit soul destroying sometimes, because in the owner's mind, their boat is either too heavy or too light, or it's too long or it's too short, or the draft isn't the depth. And there's a lot of confusing measurements that come out of the tonnage survey that aren't always particularly helpful, in terms of your day-to-day sailing. But it is sort of based on international standards. And I always sometimes say to the owners, bear in mind that on top of us just working out your tonnage and how long your boat is and all the rest of it, it is somebody independent and trusted by the registry through the survey societies that we act for, actually coming to your boat and saying, this boat really exists. It is 20 meters long, and it has 2 engines, and they are these engines. Because quite frankly, without that double check, the registry only see bits of paper that could say all sorts of things on them. So it is a nice safety check. And it goes back to, I think, what we were saying there at the start. It adds to the credibility of the British flag. Somebody actually has checked the boats there, and it's genuinely got these characteristics.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think we'll wrap up now, and thank you very much for your time, Tom and Duncan. And for our listeners, it's Oceanskies.com is the company, and for any of your registration requirements, please do reach out to them or to us at Berthon. We have a very good working knowledge of registrations and who to ask if you've got any questions. So, as ever, thank you for our podcast. Thank you for listening to our podcasts. We do these regularly with various experts in fields, and you can, I think it's Spotify, you go and listen to them on. Harry Shuttler is our man that deals with all this, and he'll tell you even more. So thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks very much, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Much appreciated.
All right, thanks, chaps.
Before we wrap up, just a quick note. If anything we're discussing in this episode is relevant to you, whether you're buying or selling, the Berthon team is always available to talk things through. With offices across the UK, Europe and the US, we're able to give a clear view of what's actually happening in the market. You can find out more via the Berthon website. Good to have you with us, and we'll see you next time.